Good morning and welcome to Veterans Heartbeat, on the pulse of the veteran, where we discuss issues of health, happiness, opportunity, and well-being of interest to the veteran community, their families, and the community who honors them.
Good morning and welcome to another episode of Veterans Heartbeat, brought to you by River, the Rural Institute for Veterans Education and Research. My name is Jason Zencraft. My co-host Ed Lisofsky is here with me, and he is the Executive Director of River. We welcome you to a weekly wide-ranging discussion of issues, events, opportunities, and needs in our veteran community. Morning, Ed. How you doing?
Morning, Jason.
We'd also like to thank our sponsor, Farside Signs. They create amazing-looking vehicle graphics that will drive traffic to your business. They are located at 1526 South Avenue West in Missoula. Follow them on the web, Instagram, and Facebook, or just stop on by.
This morning, we have in the studio Seabass, our social media director. Say good morning, Seabass.
Good morning.
We have Fez, everybody knows, our director of education.
Hey, how's it going?
And we drug out from the back room our accounting or bookkeeper, Connor. Say good morning, Connor.
Good morning. It's bright out here.
It is. And on the phone, we have Claire White, an attorney who is a veterans. Well, why don't you describe yourself, Claire?
Hi, all. I'm Claire White. I'm a veteran myself and a veterans rights attorney out of California. My practice is nationwide, and I recently joined the team to help River carry forward. So thank you for having me.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate everybody getting up this early on a Saturday morning. First thing I want to go through is, Seabass has been doing a great job at our social media, and he's been doing our website. And in doing that, he's had to go back and look at a lot of the pictures that we've had from the different events. Seabass, you got any favorites out of that?
I think the ones that I've liked the most or have seen is the group pictures, seeing a bunch of how many people actually show up for these events and people coming out, and actually that's my favorite thing about River is everyone coming together. And so all the pictures I've seen that I really enjoy are the group photos usually, even the old ones.
When we started River, I didn't even know how to spell education, and now I is one. And we did the best we could, but when we brought Fez on board, Fez, how has the education department been acting?
As of late, it's been incredible. We have active participation, meaning the students are there in class in the low 90s. Our passing rates are in the high 70s. Those that aren't passing normally are reaching out to either myself or the outreach coordinators in their local areas, and they're getting that secondary help, and they are then passing the courses. So we are light years away from when I first came in, which was a little while ago now.
Connor's been back there. Now, Connor, we've been working on a lot of processes and policies and whatnot, haven't we?
We have. There has been a lot of work that's needed to be done.
I just want to tell everybody that while we're approaching our 5th birthday, and it's an amazing feat to make it 5 years into a business, let alone a nonprofit, but we're going to make it, I think, I hope. But we did have some problems, and that's why we brought on Claire. And Claire has had to... Well, Claire, why don't you describe what you're working on with River?
Sure. Thanks, Ed. Hi, all. So, as I said earlier, I'm a veterans rights attorney, and I received a call for help from River and got into the case and came to find out that River is essentially under attack by various state entities in Montana. And I think that often when businesses, nonprofits, organizations like River find fast and incredible success like River has, they gain the attention of other entities, and sometimes that puts a target on their back. And despite the incredible work that River is doing and the plight of the rural veteran out in Montana, there are specific state and state-related entities who have decided that they want to engage in full-out slander of River's programs in an attempt to get funding for their own programs. They've tried to throw River under the bus, and they're using a wide variety of means to do so. But fortunately, you know, when things that are done in the darkness eventually come to the light, and we have a private investigator who's been doing incredible work out there, and there have been some really surprising and disappointing examples of behavior on behalf of some of these organizations who themselves claim to serve our veterans. And we're talking about behavior in public settings in front of full rooms of witnesses that make very clear their malintent in their dealings with River or their attempts to get River shut down. So fortunately, we have an incredible team working on this, and we feel confident with the information that we've collected and are continuing to collect that justice will be served here, and that River will be strong going forward, and will be able to continue serving some of the veterans who are the highest need that we see across the country.
You know, we were suspended for funding January 8th, and you're working on that very diligently. Are you making any progress?
I am. You know, the VA and those who have dealt with it can attest, can be a very slow-moving entity. It can be a very slow-moving organization. However, I mean, I've got a lot of experience working with VA, and we're really looking forward to trying to resolve this at the lowest level. River, you know, from everything I've observed, River isn't out looking for a fight. River is out looking to serve veterans. I know that the funding for several programs was suspended, but River has done really wonderful work to make any and all corrections that were identified as necessary by the VA. They achieved the reapproval from the state approving authority, and so now it's just a matter of getting VA to check the right boxes to turn the tap back on. And I've made initial contact with the VA approving official, and we're really going to create the space for them to do the right thing here and try to provide assistance in facilitating whatever it is that they need to make that happen. Now, hopefully, they'll want to work with us and not against us. But I think that things look really promising right now.
Well, they may look promising to get the funding back on because things aren't bright in the accounting world right now. So we're kind of needing this to happen, are we not, Connor?
We are, yeah, with the VA putting us on suspension, and it definitely creates a strain financially. Not being able to sign up new students or bring anybody else in definitely hurts. So the faster we can get that going again, the better.
Even without this funding, we've been able to manage to keep the lights on and the staff going. It's been an amazing feat that Connor has pulled together a reserve fund that will keep us going for a while. But, you know, in all the episodes that you guys have heard on Veterans Heartbeat, in every one, we've never tried to attack anybody. We've always been polite. But this is getting, in my opinion, this is wrong. This is wrong on every level. Claire, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, if I can. You know, I'm an outsider to Montana. I'd like to think of myself as a guest as opposed to an outsider, I suppose. But I come from the left coast, as we say, where, you know, politics have their own culture and their own shape. But I can say that it's been surprising and unfortunate and frankly disappointing to see what's happening in the landscape in Montana in terms of how, you know, some of these organizations have been approaching River and this what seems to be a competitive streak among these folks, because I can tell you what, the veterans in Montana, just like anywhere else, but particularly in Montana, have incredible need. And the kind of conduct that we've seen directed towards River is really shocks the conscience. I can say as a veteran myself, it's appalling to see that, you know, high power, big names in the state here and there in Montana, in organizations that are funded by the state, affiliated by the state, run by the state, are taking concrete, unjust steps whose only outcome will to be make veterans' lives worse off. When we're in an environment where veterans are in crisis, we're in an emergency, and to see an organization like River, who's willing to just scrap it out and operate guerrilla style and do what it takes to get done, that's part of the veteran culture. That's the veteran ethos, you know. And so on the one hand, it's so inspiring to see the work that River's doing, and on the other hand, it's really disheartening to see the kind of petty and real shameful approaches that other folks in the political sphere in Montana are taking towards River. But I feel confident, you know, that justice is going to prevail. You know, River is in the right, and River is doing right. And when you're doing right and you're in the right and your mission is right, well, then it's hard to be wrong. So when all of this comes to light and when people really get to see what's been happening here, I suspect that those folks who are at home in Montana are going to be significantly more upset than I am as an outsider looking in, because there's been a serious disservice done across the board, and it's not just River that's hurting. It's the veterans that River serves who are hurting, and their families and the communities from which they hail. In a place where there's not a lot of help out there for vets, where the landscape is a drought for veteran services, River is an oasis. And to see a concerted effort, you know, a conspiratorial effort to prevent River from doing the work it's doing. I do a lot of work around the country with a lot of different veterans organizations and, you know, folks in various different types of hot water and direct services with vets. And I've seen the VA do some pretty shocking things. And this, though, really rates up among some of the worst misconduct I've seen by people who really should be knowing how to act better. But that's why I'm here, and that's why the team's on the ground, and that's why we're pushing forward to protect River, defend River, strengthen her foundation and her services, and to make sure that this kind of intermeddling that's going on from these outside forces comes to a quick end and a final end, so that y'all can keep doing what you do best, which is serving the veterans in your community.
One thing that I do want to make clear, and I really want to give a shout out to, is Congressman Giaforte's office has been outstanding in helping us with our fight. And so has Senator Daines' office. I mean, outstanding. We couldn't ask for more support. And we're meeting with Senator Daines' office next week, and we hope that we will get more help. We've got some specific asks. There's been a lot of powerful names that have been coming together to support us. And I want to make sure that the listeners know that, hey, when you're in a pinch and you're a veterans group, and Fez, you've dealt with some of the crisis calls.
Sure.
Connor, you've taken duty where you've had crisis calls.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're not here as the first choice. We're here as the only choice for a lot of these veterans. And it's shocking to me how Montana's been at the top 3 in the suicide realm for the past 30 years. And I've been thinking about this while we've been under attack. And We had an organization in Missoula that went to the city and was upset over our flag display, over the flag display. And that is, I can't even explain that. I mean, that was, Seabass, you were around for that, weren't you?
For the
flags?
Well, I was around for the flags. Yeah, I helped with some of the social media posts on that. Yeah.
I mean, was that neutral or what?
The flags?
Yeah.
Oh, I believe so. It was just bringing in awareness, I believe.
I mean, I don't know. When we've been at number 1 or number 2 or number 3 in the suicide realm for veterans for 30 years, think about this, Claire. People are retiring off of the grants that were given to this state to solve the problem. You've been working nationwide. How cutting edge is River?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked me that because I don't know if folks who are local in Montana, really have a sense of how special this program is there because I come from a real lefty place, and in California, to get programming for veterans is an interesting tap dance that one has to do. And in places like New York and in places, where they are real liberal havens, and I'm a left radical, all my cards on the table, and my politics align with those folks in a lot of ways, but the kind of petty they get when it comes to trying to serve combat veterans or serve veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder is maybe less surprising. But in a place like Montana, where the culture is one that serves our warriors, it is mind-blowing that when folks try to bootstrap together and do successfully a program that is often run by many veterans and staffed by many veterans and serves so many veterans across such a broad area, that program would not only, that program would be attacked is, it's hard to put words to it because I receive veterans, I do a lot of direct services, most specifically for post 9/11 combat veterans, grunts, corpsmen, and operators of all stripes. And these men who are living on pig farms in Kansas or in urban New York or in rural Florida or in the Panhandle, many of them have no one, and they're isolated. And we know that isolation is what kills people. And even in their packed apartments in New York, where the density of population is so heavy, they still face isolation. So to think that in a place where rural veterans, like in Montana, are also facing the fact that they might be hundreds of miles from medical care or from a fellow veteran or from, real immediate services, that River is a shining, beacon, a lifeline for these folks. And these veterans paid the price in advance, and that's why the VA provides funding. That's why we as a community have decided that through the VA, we want to provide funding for these veterans to get back on their feet, change their lives, train themselves, and get back into the community to continue serving. And River is an organization that my men around the country, would line up for, but is unavailable to them because of where they are. And to see it in Montana is inspiring, and it can be a model to plant everywhere else, but only if it's, protected, and only if we in the veterans community and in the community of people who love us and them stand up to do something about it. And that's why our team is involved, and that's why we're prepared to fight on behalf of River, because what you do there is not something that is widely available. It's not something we see elsewhere. It is organic, and it is this beautiful combination of, meeting all of the government requirements and at the same time being able to meet unique veteran needs and bring them out into Muhammad, as they say. So you all have something really special, and it's really worth fighting for, and we're here to do whatever it takes to see you go forward.
And part of my job now is to make that model duplicatable. It's truly creating a working model where we can not necessarily franchise, but essentially train people to turn around and do that in California and do that in Florida and do it in New York. Of course, they are going to have to jump through the hoops and do all the legislative work and Office of Public Instructions and all of those things on their end. But the model that we're creating, refining every day is going to be a duplicatable model. I'm training myself to be replaceable, meaning that anybody that's competent should be able to step into my shoes and do what I do and do what Ed does and do what Connor does and do what Seabass does. That is absolutely the model that we're trying to create.
Well, not trying. We are creating it because we have offices in Polson and we have offices in Sydney. And I can tell you right now, I get calls from the outreach. Well, actually, they're recreational therapists now. They've graduated. And I get calls from them on a constant basis of, what do I do about this individual? And that brings up another point. They went absolutely bananas over the recreational therapy program. It was approved 2 years ago, I believe. And January 8th, they just went ballistic over what was approved by the Office of Public Instruction, and it was also approved by the VA themselves. They had paid a number of students to go through it, and then they pulled the plug. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Claire?
Yes, I'm so glad you brought up RT, recreational therapy. So I'm no doctor, I'm a lawyer and a humble enlisted veteran myself. But I can say that because I have confidential relationship with my vets, and many of them have no access to care because where they are, or because they have a lack of trust in traditional channels of care, that many of them call me in crisis, or they, and it's a process to get them to a place where they aren't alone and where they can find a light and a way forward and a reason to change their lives. And I can tell you that where we usually send our guys is to the vet centers around the country, and the only reason the vet centers really work for guys, which speaks as well to River's program, is that because it's peer-to-peer. Because oftentimes at vet centers around the country, there are what they call readjustment counselors or reentry counselors who are vets, who are guys just like them or gals just like them, who, can speak to that shared cultural experience and can bridge that trust gap. And these guys, they're not finding, they're not walking into hospitals to get care. They want to go to the range together and get care, or they want to go to, they want to go on fishing trips together and get care, or they want to, learn how to do some of these things that in and of themselves are healing, and in and of themselves allow them to find the peace necessary to heal. My guys, they feel guilty about wanting to do those things because they aren't framed in a way that shows them that it can be a career and it can be, something that they can do that gives back to everybody else as well. And so when you can, when you have a program that can train and certify them to do and to be thought leaders and healing leaders in their communities, like that's the way forward for vets. That's the way forward, which means it's the way forward for all of us. And the program that River has for recreational therapy is so exciting, and it's in many ways really cutting edge, but it's also really grounded in our shared cultural traditions, which is why it speaks to veterans, I would imagine, across generational, generations and across gender and across, all of these things that otherwise maybe make us set us apart. But through the recreational therapy programs, the RT programs that you have set up, it's really a way to build from within and build out and provide what we know to be culturally competent care that is accessible to our veterans
And
that
it's
that
not
they'll
only-
buy in on.
Claire, we're running out of time, but it's not only acceptable to our veterans, but it's billable under Medicaid, Medicare, and the VA. So I want that point made out. But the other thing that I want to say before we leave today is I found when we had reports back from the private investigator that one of the employees of the state of Montana went into a veterans event and almost got into a fight over another organization supporting River and was bragging how that state agency was going to shut us down. I'm beyond belief of livid. So,
And there's going to be accountability for that. I believe in accountability. And, folks are going to have to be accountable for what has happened and are going to have to adjust their conduct going forward, or they're going to have to, there's going to be consequences. So I'm hoping that we can do this the easy way and everyone can get on board for what best serves the veterans in the communities that so desperately need our help.
Well, that's been an interesting show this morning, hasn't it, folks? Thanks, everybody in the studio, and thanks, Claire, for waking up this early and calling in.
Hey, I'm an early bird. My pleasure.
So thank you very much for listening to Veterans Heartbeat. We'd not be able to bring it to you without all the support of the listeners. And thank you again to Farside Signs for sponsoring the show. If you do need a unique vehicle design, swing on by and check them out. Also, thank you to our main sponsor, River. River has an array of services such as veterans-focused education, a vestibular disorder clinic, and now non-pharmaceutical treatments for pain, anxiety, and depression. Check them out on Facebook or on the web at riverofchange.org. Lastly, we'd like to show our appreciation to all of our veterans. Thank you for serving our country and keeping it safe.